Take care.
And
Bye.
hi, David. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for doing all this and continuing the fight.
Thank you. Now, we haven't met before. Can you kindly introduce yourself? Again, we've got people watching all over the world who are not following necessarily all the ins and outs of parties. So please, anything you can share. And thanks for being here.
Sure. Well, I'm David Shoebridge. I'm a Green senator in the Australian Federal Parliament, and I'm here in Canberra, inside the Parliament. And it's the traditional owners of this land are Ngunnawal and Ngambri, and I pay my respects to those traditional owners of this Aboriginal land that we're gathered on. And I'm also one of the 4 parliamentary co-chairs of the Friends of Julian Assange. And we cover the political spectrum. I'm a bleeding heart lefty Green, and we cover there's a government member, an opposition member, and an independent as well. And I think one of the really exciting jobs we may have in a little bit is to formally disband the Parliamentary Friends of Julian Assange, even though we'll love him as much once he's free, because, it's one of those moments where a campaign that, worked, that the Parliamentary Friends group that now has, I think, about 47 members in the Australian Parliament, work that millions of people around the world have been doing, Julian's family, his lawyers, his supporters, we can actually finally say Julian is free. I mean, we still have so many structural problems to fix, broken whistleblower laws in the United States, broken whistleblower laws in this country. But, a friend of mine sent me a photo of her proudly wearing her Free Julian Assange t-shirt. And, she's a great activist. And she said, this is the first one of these shirts I've been able to retire. So that was a pretty, it's a moment, isn't it?
It's amazing, as you say, because so many of us work, and I'm sure many people who are watching this now are working across many campaigns. And it's really quite rare you get to hear someone say, oh, we formed this cross-party parliamentary Friends of Assange, committee, and now we get to disband it. It's just extraordinary. How are you feeling? How are your colleagues feeling? Where are you sitting today? This is surreal, but how does it feel for you?
Well, it's been a pretty extraordinary 24, 48 hours. I mean, yesterday when the confirmation came that Julian would be free, it hadn't yet been, he was in the air and it would be free. There were quite a few. I'm not much of a weeper as a general in politics. There were a bunch of tears in our office, tears of genuine joy and kind of relief, and this sense of, I think one of the things that we really felt here was a sense of this global solidarity campaign, that a global solidarity campaign that has connected millions of people around the country has bloody well worked. And the fact that it did cut across politics, and it cut across politics for all the right reasons, that there was this really important thing out there we were fighting for, which is the ability to speak truth to power. Sometimes, this won't surprise you. I'm a Green senator. I'm from the progressive left of politics here. And sometimes we look at politics and we just think, bloody hell, there's this constant mountain to climb. But when, this Julian was always a political prisoner in my mind, and it always was going to take a political solution. And people from all walks of life, from different political strands, helped create that political space for Julian and his team to arrange this deal and finally walk free. And I think that's pretty extraordinary. And when you're just one part of this global campaign to free Julian Assange, a global solidarity campaign, and it works, it comes good. There were quite a few tears in the office, and this, a colleague of mine, another Green senator, Peter Wish-Wilson, he was part of the Save Julian Assange Parliamentary Friends group when there were literally just two of them in this entire parliament in the group, like 8 years ago, just the two of them. And the thought that it's now grown to, a good third of the parliament, and finally Julian is home. I remember going next door and giving Peter a hug and thanking him for all that work that he did those years ago.
That's extraordinary. It's really, really moving to hear. And I want to say, just again, so many of us are working on different issues, and hearing, you forming that parliamentary group in Australia of MPs from different parties, and now being able to disband it and winning, getting this win for Julian's freedom. But it's also so inspiring to hear for these other issues we're working on. I know of a parliamentary group in the UK that's still trying to work to get the final men out of Guantanamo. And again, it's just very hard getting MPs to show up to meetings and all the rest. And to hear of this miracle and this positive result is, I think, invigorating and inspiring for everyone working on all these sorts of issues where it's not always on people's minds. It's not front, so it's really, really moving to have a day like this. Is there anything else you'd like to say? I feel like you're about to say something. And again, remember, we've got people around the world. So anything you want to say to people? I know people are watching everywhere.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. We celebrate that Julian's free, but the fact that he had to plead guilty to an offence, and the fact that the US administration still thinks it's legitimate to try and silence someone like Julian Assange, to try and silence a whistleblower and a journalist, the thought that the United States can legitimately say it has legislation that can reach into any country in the world and pluck out one of their citizens, even if they have no connection to the United States, because somebody from Australia or the United Kingdom, Russia or India, somebody is daring to spill the secrets of US war crimes. The thought that they still think that's legitimate, it shows how much work we have to do. And even our Prime Minister, who, came on board in the last 6 months or so and has changed the tone for Australia, and I'll acknowledge that. We still haven't got a Prime Minister who's willing to say that this entire exercise by the United States of thinking that they can reach into the globe anywhere and silence somebody, surely our Prime Minister should have said from day one, this is an Australian citizen. You do not have a right to silence an Australian citizen, let alone jail them, because they're spilling your military secrets. We haven't heard that. And we haven't heard it from the UK equivalent, and we don't hear that from allies of the United States. And I think this is essential, that we actually come together around the globe and call this out for what it is, which is a grossly illegitimate exercise of political power against an inconvenient political voice. And in my home country of Australia, where Julian's come home, we celebrate Julian coming home, and a whistleblower is finally free. But at the same time, the Australian government has just jailed another whistleblower, a man called David McBride, who blew the whistle on war crimes by Australian soldiers in the war in Afghanistan. He blew the whistle on appalling war crimes, which an inquiry was then instituted. It validated what David McBride had said. But nevertheless, the same government that is, puffing themselves up and giving them credit for helping get Julian out, continued a prosecution against David McBride. And only, a short month or so ago, he was sentenced to 5.5 years in jail for telling the truth, and for telling the truth about war crimes in Afghanistan. And as Julian's walking off a plane in Canberra here, and just barely 5 kilometres down the road, David McBride is in jail, having just been put in jail a month ago by the same government. So, and I know Australia's not alone in these kind of struggles. I know that jurisdictions around the world are trying to create the right environment for protection for whistleblowers, whistleblower commissions, people and organisations to protect people who tell us about the wrongdoings of government. And yeah, we might disband the Save Julian Assange committee, and maybe next week we'll start the Free David McBride committee and Protect Whistleblowers committee as well.
Thank you for bringing up his case. And I know Stella Assange, Julian's wife, has spoken about David McBride, and thank you for bringing that up. And I guess you're just highlighting the reality of these sort of brutal contradictions, right? That there's, a good thing happening, but it can be very bittersweet, and there are these sort of glaring contradictions. So I feel like you're almost saying there's a bit of a rallying cry of some of the things Julian has sacrificed so much, more than any journalist I can think of right now, obviously. And I feel like you're almost saying like it's up to us to sort of run with the baton and sort of keep bringing certain issues, to people's consciousness. So can you say, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but if you could maybe say any words about that, just a little bit more.
Well, first of all, let's celebrate this moment, and let's celebrate this as a win, and it's a win that millions of people have contributed to. So whatever small part people have played, if it's an email, if it's a phone call, if it's a donation, if it's whatever it is, celebrate your part in this, and remember everybody was a part in this in making this win. But let's not dismantle the movement. Let's maintain the movement and let's break the broken laws that led to this in the first place. Let's insist upon the power of truth, because I mean, if there's one thing that Julian has proven, and he's proven it at huge personal cost to him and his kids and Stella, his dad, his brother, but particularly to Julian. I mean, he's lost years and years of his life in a prison cell. If there's one thing he's told us, is that whatever rotten government tries to do, however powerful a government thinks it is, the power of truth, when millions of people get behind a basic, simple truth, that is more powerful than any government. And let's remember that. Let's focus on that. Let's organize around that. Let's have a pause. Maybe we can take the weekend off and then get back on the struggle and retain this global movement. Because I don't know about you, but I just get a sense of how powerful we can be when around this little globe we come together for something as essential as this. And let's do more of that.
And boy, do we need this nourishing win at this time, right? Like, these are long battles. And to get to a point like this that many of us didn't, we didn't know if it could be years more, is really nourishing. So I think, as you say, let's celebrate this amazing day and the millions of people around the world who played a part across all, demographics and party lines. And then we'll keep on doing this work. How are you going to be celebrating, David, in Australia?
Well, a good colleague of mine has just been admitted into the Senate here, and she's got a small gathering. We're going to go and yell a few free Julians and join with some of my family actually later tonight too. And it's a very simple pleasure, isn't it? But knowing that Julian and joining for the first time for a few years, I think we'll all take greater pleasure in those moments.
Exactly. And ahead of, as the judge said, ahead of his birthday next week. David, thank you so much for all you've been doing and lead, helping lead this movement with your parliamentarians. And please thank your teams and all the colleagues you speak with. And just, grateful to meet you, and thank you for everything.
Thanks very much. Cheers.